Jonathan Harper stood by the expansive window of his corner office, gazing out over the sprawling cityscape that stretched beneath him. As the chief financial officer of a major corporation, his days were a whirlwind of spreadsheets, board meetings, and strategic planning sessions. Success had been his constant companion, a testament to his unwavering dedication and meticulous nature. Yet, despite his professional achievements, Jonathan often found himself yearning for a deeper connection beyond the numbers and deadlines. At home, life was a different rhythm altogether. The Harper residence was a warm, inviting space nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood, filled with memories accumulated over 19 years of marriage. Photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments of laughter, love, and shared milestones. Jonathan's twin daughters, Emma and Lily, were the light of his life, their spirited personalities and innocent joys a balm to the stresses of his demanding career. Abigail Harper, his wife, embodied grace and resilience. Her journey had not been without its scars. 19 years earlier, she had endured a painful divorce from her ex-husband, Edward, whose infidelity had shattered her trust and left lingering wounds. Yet, Abigail had emerged stronger, channeling her pain into becoming a steadfast partner and a devoted mother. Her role as the maid of honor at her best friend's wedding was a reflection of her supportive nature and the deep bonds she nurtured with those around her. That morning, as Jonathan prepared for another long day at the office, the house buzzed with the usual morning activities. Emma and Lily were getting ready for school, their chatter filling the kitchen with youthful energy. Abigail moved gracefully through the household, ensuring everything was in order, her presence a calming force amidst the daily hustle. "Good morning, honey," Jonathan greeted, offering a warm smile as he grabbed his tie from the rack. "Morning, love. Don't forget we have Megan's wedding reception this Saturday," Abigail reminded him gently, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of anticipation and a hint of anxiety. Jonathan nodded, adjusting his tie. "I haven't forgotten. It's going to be a beautiful day." Abigail smiled, but there was an undercurrent of something unspoken in her demeanor. She had been looking forward to supporting her best friend, yet lately, there had been a subtle distance growing between them, a chasm that neither had fully acknowledged. As Jonathan left for work, the familiar routine settled back into place. The family home, with its cozy nooks and cherished mementos, stood as a testament to their shared life. Yet, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect union, complexity simmered, hinting at the emotional turbulence that was yet to unfold. That evening, as Jonathan immersed himself in his work, Abigail busied herself with preparations for the upcoming wedding. Their conversations had become sparse, their interactions tinged with the stress of balancing career ambitions and personal commitments. Jonathan's late nights at the office, though driven by his commitment to providing for his family, often left Abigail feeling isolated, yearning for the connection they once effortlessly shared. As the sun set and the city lights began to twinkle, the Harper household settled into its nightly rhythm. Emma and Lily were tucked into bed, their dreams untainted by the strains that sometimes echoed through their parents' lives. Abigail sat alone in the living room, the weight of unspoken feelings pressing down on her. She glanced at the framed photo of her and Jonathan on their wedding day, a moment of pure joy frozen in time, and wondered how they had drifted to this point. The week leading up to Megan's wedding was typically a flurry of excitement and meticulous planning for Abigail Harper. As the maid of honor, her responsibilities were numerous, from organizing the bridal shower to ensuring every detail was perfect for her best friend's special day. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, a sense of unease had begun to gnaw at her. Jonathan's dedication to his role as CFO was both admirable and, at times, exhausting for Abigail. Lately, his work hours had extended longer than usual, and his presence at home had become sporadic. The twins, Emma and Lily, often found themselves navigating the household dynamics with a maturity beyond their years, sensing the subtle shifts in their parents' relationship. One Thursday afternoon, as Abigail meticulously arranged floral centerpieces in the dining room, her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Jonathan's office, an urgent meeting request that required his immediate attention. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning, the very day of Megan's wedding reception. Abigail's heart sank. She had hoped Jonathan would make time to attend, not just as a supportive husband but also to share in the joy of her best friend's union. The thought of celebrating without him felt incomplete. That evening, over a quiet dinner, Abigail decided to broach the subject. She placed her fork down, meeting Jonathan's eyes with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Jonathan, I received the invitation to Megan's wedding reception on Saturday. I was really hoping you could come with me," she began softly. Jonathan glanced at his watch, then back at her. "Abigail, I wish I could, but something urgent has come up at work. They need me for a meeting that can't be postponed." Abigail felt a pang of disappointment but masked it with a smile. "I understand. It's just been a stressful week, and having you there would mean a lot." Jonathan reached across the table, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I promise we'll make it up soon. Maybe a weekend getaway?" Abigail nodded, her smile tinged with sadness. "That would be lovely." As Jonathan left for work that night, the air between them felt colder, the distance more pronounced. Abigail retreated to the sanctuary of the living room, her thoughts a tangled web of emotions. She admired Jonathan's commitment to his career, yet the sacrifices demanded by his position were beginning to erode the foundation of their marriage. Throughout the week, Abigail threw herself into the wedding preparations with renewed vigor, seeking solace in the whirlwind of tasks. Yet, every time her phone buzzed with a work-related message for Jonathan, a lingering sense of resentment bubbled to the surface. She couldn't help but wonder if their once unshakable bond was beginning to crack under the weight of competing priorities. Saturday arrived with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The Harper household was abuzz with final touches, guests arriving early to set up before the festivities began. Abigail dressed meticulously, choosing an elegant gown that reflected her role as maid of honor. Her twin daughters, Emma and Lily, fussed over her hair and makeup, their innocent chatter providing a temporary distraction from her inner turmoil. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the venue, Abigail took a deep breath and stepped into the reception hall. The room was beautifully decorated, a testament to Megan's impeccable taste and Abigail's organizational skills. Friends and family mingled, laughter filling the air, creating an atmosphere of celebration and joy. Abigail's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for Jonathan's familiar face. She felt a pang of loneliness as moments turned into minutes, and minutes into an hour. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Jonathan, running late, stuck in meetings. "See you soon." Frustration welled up inside her, but she reminded herself to stay composed. This was Megan's day, and she deserved to enjoy it without overshadowing it with their personal struggles. As the evening progressed, Abigail found herself drifting away from the festivities, seeking refuge in the quiet corners of the venue. It was there, amidst the soft hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses, that she encountered Edward. Edward Carter had been a ghost from Abigail's past, a reminder of a chapter filled with heartache and betrayal. Their divorce had been messy, the result of Edward's infidelity, a wound that had taken years to heal. Though they had parted ways amicably, with shared custody of their son, the emotional scars still lingered. Tonight, however, Edward seemed different, more composed, his eyes reflecting a depth of emotion that Abigail couldn't quite decipher. They exchanged polite greetings, reminiscing briefly about old times. As the night wore on, the familiar camaraderie resurfaced, fueled by shared memories and the intoxicating atmosphere of the wedding reception. Later that evening, as Abigail watched Megan and her new husband share their first dance, she felt a surge of emotions. The sight of their happiness contrasted sharply with her own struggles, amplifying the void she felt in her marriage. The loneliness, the unmet expectations, and the yearning for connection pressed heavily on her heart. In a moment of vulnerability, Abigail excused herself and found herself alone with Edward in a secluded alcove. The dim lighting cast shadows on their faces, creating an intimate setting that neither had anticipated. They talked about their lives since the divorce, the challenges they had faced, and the moments that had shaped them. As the night deepened, so did their conversation, delving into topics that had long been unspoken. The emotional resonance between them rekindled feelings Abigail had worked so hard to bury. Caught in the whirlwind of emotions and the haze of alcohol, Abigail felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. Unbeknownst to her, Jonathan was also grappling with his own frustrations at the wedding. Watching his wife interact warmly with old friends, unaware of the silent storm brewing within her, only heightened his sense of isolation. The seeds of doubt, planted by missed connections and unmet needs, were beginning to take root. The morning sun filtered softly through the Harper household, casting a warm glow that belied the tension simmering beneath the surface. Jonathan woke to the persistent hum of his smartphone, the screen displaying a flurry of unread emails and notifications. He glanced over at the clock, another early start at the office awaited him. The previous night's events lingered in his mind, a mixture of professional obligations and personal frustrations intertwining to create a complex web of emotions. Meanwhile, Abigail awoke with a heavy heart. The events of Saturday replayed in her mind like a haunting melody.
The laughter, the conversations, the rekindled connection with Edward, all culminating in a moment she couldn't fully comprehend.
She sat up slowly, the weight of her actions pressing down on her chest. The images of Edward's familiar smile and the warmth in his eyes stirred feelings she had long suppressed. As the day progressed, subtle cracks began to appear in the once solid foundation of the Harper marriage. Jonathan, engrossed in his work, failed to notice the quiet distance growing between him and Abigail. His dedication, while admirable, had become a double-edged sword, leaving little room for the intimacy and connection Abigail craved. Abigail, on the other hand, grappled with a whirlwind of emotions. Guilt gnawed at her conscience, but so did a lingering sense of emptiness that Jonathan's absence had exacerbated. She found herself torn between loyalty to her husband and the unresolved feelings that Edward had awakened. The presence of her twin daughters added another layer of complexity. How could she navigate her own turmoil without impacting their sense of security and happiness? That afternoon, as Jonathan prepared for an important board meeting, Abigail made a decision. She needed clarity, a moment to reflect on her feelings and the state of her marriage. Gathering her thoughts, she approached Jonathan, who was meticulously reviewing financial reports.
"Jonathan, can we talk for a moment?" Abigail asked, her voice tinged with hesitation.
Jonathan looked up, sensing the seriousness in her tone.
"Of course. What's on your mind?"
They sat down together in the spacious living room, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air.
Abigail took a deep breath, searching for the right words.
"I've been feeling disconnected lately," she began, her eyes meeting his with a vulnerability that was rare for her. "With your work demanding so much of you, and me being so focused on the wedding preparations, it feels like we're drifting apart."
Jonathan frowned, the reality of her words sinking in. "I know things have been hectic. I'm sorry you feel that way. I've been trying to balance everything, but it's been challenging."
Abigail reached out, taking his hand in hers.
"I understand how important your career is, and I admire your dedication.
But I miss the closeness we used to share.
I've been feeling lonely, and I don't know how to fix it."
Jonathan squeezed her hand gently, a flicker of guilt crossing his features.
"I miss us too.
Maybe we can find some time this weekend to reconnect, just the two of us." Abigail nodded, a semblance of hope flickering in her eyes.
"I'd like that."
As they sat together, the conversation laid bare the underlying issues that had been festering beneath the surface. It was a moment of honesty and vulnerability, a crucial step toward addressing the growing distance between them. Yet, the seeds of doubt had already been planted, and the shadows of the past were beginning to cast long and unpredictable paths. Later that evening, Abigail found herself unable to shake the memories of her conversation with Edward from the previous night. Their reunion had been innocent enough at first, but the emotional resonance between them had ignited a spark she thought had long been extinguished. She questioned whether it was merely a fleeting connection or the beginning of something more profound. As Jonathan immersed himself in his work, preparing for the upcoming merger that could elevate his career to new heights, Abigail wrestled with her feelings. The balance between loyalty and longing became increasingly precarious, setting the stage for choices that would irrevocably alter the course of their lives.
The days following the heartfelt conversation between Jonathan and Abigail were laden with a heavy silence. Though they had acknowledged the growing distance between them, the underlying issues remained unresolved, festering beneath the surface.
Jonathan threw himself deeper into his work, believing that success might bridge the widening gap at home.
Abigail, on the other hand, oscillated between bouts of guilt and a restless yearning for connection that she couldn't quite name.
One evening, as Jonathan wrapped up another grueling day at the office, he decided to take a different route home to unwind. The city's hustle seemed to drain him, and the thought of returning to the quietude of his home felt almost unbearable. He stepped into a nearby cafe, hoping a change of scenery would offer some respite. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed with a notification, an email marked urgent from the company's legal team regarding the ongoing merger. Frustrated by the interruption, Jonathan scrolled through his emails, finding himself inundated with work-related stress. He barely glanced at the messages, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of Abigail's absence at Megan's wedding and their recent conversation. The looming merger, a potential pinnacle in his career, weighed heavily on him, making it difficult to relax. Meanwhile, Abigail sat alone in the living room, the twins tucked into bed after their nightly routines. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling atmosphere of the wedding reception that had taken place just days earlier. She stared blankly at her phone, the screen displaying a series of messages from Edward that she had saved but never sent. Each message was a reminder of the emotional entanglement she felt, stirring memories she had tried desperately to bury. Unable to quell her restless thoughts, Abigail decided to revisit the photos from Megan's wedding. She opened the gallery on her phone, scrolling through images of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Then, her gaze landed on a series of candid shots taken by one of the guests. There, in the background of a picture capturing the bride and groom's first dance, Jonathan stood alone, a shadow among the revelers. Her heart ached at the sight of his solitude, amplifying the guilt that gnawed at her. Determined to find some clarity, Abigail began sifting through her messages, coming across a series of texts from Edward sent on the night of the wedding. The conversations had been innocuous at first, catching up, reminiscing about old times, but gradually, they had delved into more personal territory. There were subtle hints of emotional intimacy, phrases laden with unspoken longing that Abigail now viewed with increasing unease. As she scrolled, a particular message caught her attention. "I can't stop thinking about you, Abigail. Meeting you tonight brought back so many feelings." Her breath caught in her throat, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. She had convinced herself that reconnecting with Edward was a harmless act of seeking comfort, a fleeting moment of vulnerability born from loneliness. But now, the reality of her betrayal settled in, the lines between right and wrong blurring into a haze of regret. At the same time, Jonathan's workload showed no signs of abating. Late nights became the norm, his presence at home dwindling to brief exchanges and hurried goodnights. The stress of the merger compounded his sense of isolation, making it increasingly difficult to reach out to Abigail. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, a persistent unease that gnawed at him, but he couldn't pinpoint its source. One Saturday morning, as Jonathan prepared for yet another day at the office, he decided to take a moment to reflect. He sat in his study, surrounded by financial reports and market analyses, but his mind wandered to Abigail and the unspoken tensions that had grown between them. He reached for his phone, intent on sending a reassuring message, but froze as he noticed a notification he had previously overlooked: an album shared by a mutual friend from the wedding. Curiosity piqued, Jonathan opened the album, scrolling through the vibrant images capturing the joyous moments of the reception. His eyes fell upon the same photo Abigail had examined earlier, him standing alone, seemingly lost in his own world amidst the celebration. A sudden sense of dread washed over him, a premonition that something was terribly wrong. Determined to uncover the truth, Jonathan began to delve deeper into the shared album, searching for any signs of Abigail's interactions that evening. His heart pounded as he noticed a series of blurred images where Abigail and another man appeared to be sharing intimate moments. Doubt and fear clouded his judgment, prompting him to reach out to one of the wedding guests for clarification. The response he received confirmed his worst fears: photos and messages revealing Abigail's emotional and physical involvement with Edward. Jonathan's world seemed to tilt on its axis, the foundation of his marriage cracking beneath the weight of betrayal. The realization that the trust he had so diligently built was now shattered left him reeling, struggling to comprehend the depth of Abigail's actions. That evening, Jonathan returned home with a heavy heart, the evidence of Abigail's infidelity weighing him down. As he walked through the front door, the familiar scent of home did little to soothe his turmoil. He found Abigail in the living room, her eyes tired and distant, the burden of her secret threatening to consume her. "Abigail," he began, his voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger, "we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes meeting his with a flicker of fear and regret. The room seemed to shrink around them, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved pain. In that moment, the fragile threads that had held their marriage together began to unravel, setting the stage for the tumultuous journey that lay ahead. The evening air was thick with tension as Jonathan Harper stood in the doorway of their living room, the weight of his discovery pressing down on him like an invisible force. The evidence of Abigail's infidelity lay bare before him, a series of photos and messages that painted a painful picture of betrayal. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the shattering of the trust they had meticulously built over 19 years. Abigail sat on the couch, her posture slumped and eyes vacant, seemingly unaware of the storm that had just entered their home. The room, once a sanctuary filled with warmth and shared memories, now felt cold and alien. Jonathan took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions before addressing the elephant in the room. "Abigail," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of fear, confusion, and an undeniable spark of guilt. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and unresolved pain. Abigail started, her voice trembling. "Jonathan, I can explain." Jonathan shook his head, his frustration and hurt evident. "Explain what, Abigail?"
Why were you with Edward at Megan's wedding? After everything you've done to protect our family, why betray us like this?
Tears welled in Abigail's eyes as she struggled to find the right words.
It wasn't planned. I was lonely, overwhelmed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen.
Jonathan's mind raced, memories of their nearly 2 decades together flashing before his eyes, shared joys, challenges overcome, the birth of their daughters Emma and Lily.
How had it come to this? You say it wasn't planned, but you reconnected with him at the wedding, a night meant to celebrate love and unity.
How long has this been going on? He demanded, his voice rising despite his efforts to remain calm.
Abigail's shoulders shook with silent sobs. It was just one moment of weakness, Jonathan. I never wanted to hurt you or the girls. I felt so isolated, and Edward was there. It was a mistake. Jonathan felt a pang of empathy amidst his anger.
He saw the pain and regret in her eyes, the same pain she must have felt during her divorce from Edward. Yet, the betrayal cut deep, leaving him questioning the very foundation of their marriage.
I trusted you, Abigail, he said, his voice breaking. I trusted you completely. How do we move past this? How do I know this won't happen again?
Abigail reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered inches away from his. I don't have all the answers right now, but I want to make this work. I want to rebuild your trust in our family.
Please, let me try.
Jonathan pulled back, unable to meet her gaze. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls echoing with the silence of their fractured relationship. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the immediate reality was clear: their marriage had reached a critical juncture. We need time, Abigail, he said finally, his voice softening but resolute. Time to figure out what we want and how, or if we can continue together.
Abigail nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'm so sorry, Jonathan. Truly. As the night wore on, the Harpers sat in uncomfortable proximity, each lost in their own turmoil.
The once vibrant connection between them now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the stark reality of betrayal and the daunting task of reconciliation.
In the days that followed, the household was enveloped in a tense silence.
Jonathan immersed himself further into his work, seeking solace in the familiar rhythms of his professional life. Abigail, grappling with her actions, became a ghost in her own home, her presence a constant reminder of the fragility of their marriage.
Emma and Lily, sensing the discord, tried to bridge the growing gap with their innocent attempts at bringing their parents together.
Their laughter and playful banter provided fleeting moments of normalcy amidst the chaos, but the underlying strain was palpable. One evening, as Jonathan returned home late from another demanding day at the office, he found Abigail in the kitchen, preparing dinner in the muted glow of the overhead lights. She didn't look up as he entered, her movements mechanical and detached. We need to decide what's next for us, Jonathan said, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. I can't continue like this, feeling betrayed and unsure about our future. Abigail paused, the knife in her hand still as she contemplated his words.
I know. And I want to find a way to fix this, but I don't know how.
The conversation marked the beginning of a painful and necessary dialogue between them. They sought the help of a marriage counselor, hoping that professional guidance could navigate them through the tangled emotions and fractured trust. The sessions were arduous, each meeting peeling back layers of resentment, hurt, and unspoken desires. As the weeks turned into months, both Jonathan and Abigail faced their own introspections. Jonathan grappled with reconciling his love for Abigail with the pain of her betrayal. He questioned his own role in the breakdown of their relationship, recognizing that his dedication to work had created an emotional chasm between them. Abigail, meanwhile, delved into understanding the depths of her loneliness and the allure of reconnecting with Edward. She confronted the unresolved feelings that had drawn her back to him, acknowledging the void that Jonathan's absence had created in her life. Their journey was neither linear nor straightforward. There were moments of hope interspersed with setbacks, tears mingling with tentative steps toward healing.
The process was slow, requiring immense patience, empathy, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths.
One rainy afternoon, as the twins played quietly in their rooms, Jonathan and Abigail found themselves alone in the living room once more. The air was heavy with anticipation, the silence a stark contrast to the emotional upheaval that had defined their recent months. I've been thinking, Jonathan began, his voice uncharacteristically gentle, maybe we need to take some time apart to really understand what we want. Abigail looked up, her eyes reflecting both sadness and relief.
I thought you might say that. Maybe some distance will help us see things more clearly.
They agreed to a temporary separation, a decision that was both heartbreaking and necessary. It wasn't a definitive end, but rather a pause to allow each of them to rediscover their individual identities outside the confines of their fractured marriage. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan found solace in his work, yet he couldn't escape the pervasive sense of loss. He missed the companionship, the shared dreams, and the simple joys of family life. Abigail, on her part, sought comfort in reconnecting with old friends and focusing on her daughters, striving to rebuild her sense of self. Despite the physical distance, the emotional ties that bound them remained, a testament to the deep love that still lingered beneath the surface. The journey toward healing was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of hope that perhaps, with time and effort, their paths might converge once more. The days of temporary separation settled into a rhythm that felt both foreign and necessary for Jonathan and Abigail Harper. Each had retreated into their own spaces, seeking clarity and solace amidst the turmoil that had engulfed their once harmonious marriage. The decision to part ways, though agonizing, was made with a mutual understanding that healing required individual introspection. Jonathan immersed himself in his work with a fervor that bordered on obsessive. The office, once a source of professional pride, became his refuge from the emotional wreckage at home. Late nights spent poring over financial reports and strategic plans offered a temporary escape from the pervasive sense of loss. Yet, beneath the surface of his professional achievements, a quiet despair lingered. One evening, as the city lights flickered outside his office window, Jonathan found himself alone in the conference room, the remnants of a long day's meeting strewn about. He stared at the boardroom table, tracing the patterns formed by scattered documents with a detached gaze. The weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him, but the burden was amplified by the absence of Abigail's presence in his life. His phone buzzed on the table, a reminder of yet another email from the legal team regarding the merger. He sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken thoughts. Despite his attempts to bury his feelings in work, the reality of his crumbling marriage gnawed at him relentlessly. The laughter of his daughters, once a source of joy, now seemed distant echoes in the corridors of his busy life. Across town, Abigail navigated her own journey of self-discovery and healing. The temporary separation provided her with the space to confront the emotions she had long suppressed. The nights were the hardest, the silence of the house amplifying the echoes of her actions and their repercussions. She often found herself wandering through the rooms of their shared home, each space a repository of memories that now felt tainted by betrayal. One afternoon, Abigail sat in the quiet of her bedroom, her thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. She opened the journal she had kept over the years, a habit she had returned to in search of clarity. Her pen hovered over the blank page before she began to write, the ink flowing as she poured out her tangled emotions. Today feels like a turning point. I never imagined that my loneliness would lead me down this path, but here I am, facing the consequences of my actions. I need to find a way to forgive myself before I can hope to rebuild anything meaningful with Jonathan. Her reflections were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside her door. It was Emma, her elder twin, knocking softly before entering with a concerned expression. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma asked, her voice gentle yet filled with worry. Abigail closed her journal, forcing a smile. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just thinking." Emma sat beside her, reaching out to take her hand. "I know things are tough right now, but we'll get through this together." Abigail nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand gratefully. "Thank you, Emma. Your support means everything to me." Meanwhile, Edward Carter watched the unraveling of Abigail's life with a mix of regret and unresolved feelings. Their reconnection at Megan's wedding had stirred emotions he thought he had long buried. Guilt weighed heavily on him as he observed the strain it had placed on Abigail's marriage. Despite their past, Edward couldn't help but feel responsible for the pain he had inadvertently caused. One evening, Edward decided to reach out to Abigail, hoping to offer support without overstepping boundaries. He sent her a simple message. "Abigail, I've been thinking about you. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Hours passed without a response, the silence speaking volumes. Edward's heart sank, realizing the depth of the turmoil he had stirred. He knew he had to respect Abigail's space, but the lingering connection between them made it difficult to step back completely. As weeks turned into months, both Jonathan and Abigail navigated their separate paths with cautious optimism and lingering doubts. Jonathan began to attend individual therapy sessions, seeking ways to balance his professional ambitions with his personal life. He recognized that his relentless pursuit of career success had inadvertently contributed to the emotional distance that had plagued his marriage. Abigail, too, sought counseling, delving into the roots of her loneliness and the allure of reconnecting with Edward. Her sessions were a journey through past wounds and present vulnerabilities, each step bringing her closer to understanding the complexities of her emotions. One sunny afternoon, Jonathan found himself in his office, staring blankly at the reports before him. The walls of his professional sanctuary felt increasingly confining, the achievements hollow without Abigail by his side. He reached for his phone, contemplating sending her a message, but hesitated. The fear of rejection and further hurt kept his fingers from typing out the words. Meanwhile, Abigail attended a local support group for individuals navigating marital challenges. Sharing her story with others provided a sense of solidarity and hope. She listened to stories of pain and resilience, finding comfort in the shared experiences of those around her. One evening, as autumn leaves danced outside her window, Abigail received a letter in the mail.
It was from Jonathan. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the envelope, recognizing his handwriting immediately. Taking a deep breath, she began to read. Dear Abigail. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months.
Our separation has been one of the hardest things I've ever faced, but it has also given me the clarity I needed to understand what truly matters. I miss you and our daughters more than words can express. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship, if you are.
With all my love, Jonathan *.
Tears welled in Abigail's eyes as she folded the letter, the sincerity of Jonathan's words touching her deeply. It was a glimmer of hope in the midst of her pain, a sign that perhaps their paths could converge once more.
Inspired by Jonathan's heartfelt letter, Abigail decided to reach out.
She replied with a message of her own, expressing her willingness to explore the possibility of reconciliation. They agreed to meet for coffee, a neutral ground where they could begin to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. The meeting was tentative, filled with nervous energy and cautious optimism. They spoke openly about their feelings, the mistakes they had made, and the steps they were willing to take to heal. It was a moment of vulnerability and honesty, a crucial step toward rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. As they parted that evening, both Jonathan and Abigail felt a sense of cautious hope. The journey ahead would be challenging, fraught with emotional hurdles and difficult conversations, but the desire to mend what was broken provided the motivation to move forward. The following week dawned with a sense of anticipation tinged with apprehension. Jonathan and Abigail Harper had both experienced a tumultuous journey over the past months, marked by betrayal, separation, and intense emotional introspection. Now, as they prepared to meet for coffee, the air between them was charged with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Abigail arrived at the quaint cafe early, choosing a quiet corner table that offered a semblance of privacy amidst the soft hum of conversations and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. She glanced around, her heart fluttering with nervous energy, and took a deep breath to steady herself. Moments later, Jonathan walked in, his expression a blend of determination and vulnerability. He offered a tentative smile as he approached her. "Hi, Abigail," he greeted, pulling out the chair opposite her. "Hi, Jonathan," she replied softly, returning his smile with one of her own, albeit slightly strained. They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. Finally, Jonathan broke the ice. "I'm glad you agreed to meet," he began, his voice steady yet gentle. "I think it's important for us to talk openly about everything." Abigail nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and determination. "I agree. We have a lot to unpack, and I want to approach this with honesty and respect." The conversation flowed slowly at first, each word carefully chosen as they navigated the delicate terrain of their emotions. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Jonathan said, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "I realized that my dedication to work, while beneficial for our family financially, created a distance between us. I was so focused on providing and succeeding that I neglected the emotional connection we needed." Abigail reached out, placing her hand over his. "I understand, Jonathan. I felt that distance too. Your late nights and constant meetings made me feel isolated and unsupported. I sought comfort in ways I shouldn't have, and for that, I am truly sorry." Jonathan squeezed her hand gently. "I appreciate your honesty, Abigail. I know my work habits contributed to the strain on our marriage. I want to change that. I want to be more present, not just for our daughters, but for us." Abigail nodded, her eyes misting over. "And I want to rebuild the trust that was broken."
It's going to take time, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. As they delved deeper into their conversation, the raw emotions began to surface. Jonathan shared his feelings of betrayal and the shock of discovering Abigail's infidelity. Abigail spoke of her loneliness and the emotional turmoil that led her to seek solace in Edward's presence. "I never wanted to hurt you," Abigail confessed, her voice breaking. "I was feeling so alone, and reconnecting with Edward was a mistake born out of desperation, not desire." Jonathan looked into her eyes, searching for sincerity. "I know you didn't mean for it to happen, but the pain is still there. It's going to take time for me to process this." Abigail nodded understandingly. "I don't expect forgiveness right away. I just want you to know how deeply sorry I am and that I'm committed to making things right." Their conversation continued, gradually shifting from confrontation to collaboration. They discussed the importance of rebuilding their emotional connection and establishing new boundaries to prevent similar issues from arising in the future. "I think therapy has been helpful," Jonathan remarked. "It's given me tools to better manage my work-life balance and communicate more effectively." Abigail agreed. "And my counseling sessions have helped me understand my own needs and how to address them without hurting others. Maybe we can continue attending sessions together to guide us through this process." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's a good idea. It shows that we're both committed to healing and moving forward, whether that means staying together or finding peace apart." As the afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow on their faces, a sense of cautious optimism began to take root. The road ahead was undoubtedly challenging, but the willingness to communicate openly and honestly provided a foundation upon which they could rebuild their relationship. Before parting ways, Jonathan reached out to squeeze Abigail's hand one last time. "Thank you for meeting with me today. It means a lot." Abigail smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, Jonathan, for being willing to work through this together." They left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose, each carrying the weight of their past while embracing the possibility of a better future. The bridges they began to rebuild were fragile, but they were built with the intention of lasting resilience and mutual understanding. Unbeknownst to them, Edward Carter observed their reconciliation efforts from a distance. His interactions with Abigail had inadvertently rekindled feelings that neither of them fully understood. As he watched them navigate their path to healing, Edward grappled with his own emotions, regret for his role in the unraveling of their marriage and a lingering affection that complicated his own life. One evening, Edward decided to reach out to Abigail once more, not with the intention of rekindling their past, but out of genuine concern for her well-being. "Abigail, I've been thinking about our last conversation. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." He hesitated before sending the message, the weight of his past actions pressing heavily upon him. He knew that his involvement had contributed to the pain Abigail and Jonathan were experiencing, and he struggled with how to move forward without further complicating their lives. The therapy sessions became a cornerstone of their efforts to mend their fractured relationship. Dr. Elena Martinez, a compassionate and insightful counselor, guided them through the intricate process of rebuilding trust and understanding. Each session peeled back layers of resentment, fear, and unspoken desires, allowing Jonathan and Abigail to confront the underlying issues that had led to their current predicament. Session highlights. Understanding triggers. Dr. Martinez encouraged both to identify and articulate the specific triggers that had contributed to their emotional distance. Jonathan acknowledged that his relentless pursuit of career success had inadvertently sidelined his emotional availability, leaving Abigail feeling neglected and isolated. Expressing vulnerability, Abigail bravely shared her feelings of loneliness and the emotional void that had led her to seek comfort in Edward's presence. She articulated how the absence of emotional support and intimacy had made her susceptible to rekindling past connections. Rebuilding communication. Emphasis was placed on developing healthier communication patterns. They practiced active listening, ensuring that each felt heard and validated without judgment or interruption. As the sessions progressed, a semblance of understanding began to emerge. Both realized that their challenges were not solely rooted in the infidelity but also in the broader context of their evolving identities and unmet emotional needs. Reconnecting with family. Outside the confines of therapy, Jonathan and Abigail made concerted efforts to reconnect with their daughters, Emma and Lily. Recognizing the importance of maintaining a stable and nurturing environment for their twins, they prioritized family activities that fostered togetherness and joy. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the Harpers organized a family picnic in their favorite local park.
The day was filled with laughter, playful games, and heartfelt conversations. Watching Emma and Lily run freely across the open fields, Jonathan and Abigail felt a renewed sense of purpose in their commitment to each other and their family.
Edward's continued presence.
Despite their efforts to focus on healing, Edward Carter remained an unanticipated variable in their journey. His lingering presence created a persistent undercurrent of tension, threatening to destabilize the fragile progress Jonathan and Abigail had made.
Edward's internal struggle.
Edward grappled with his own emotions, torn between his lingering affection for Abigail and the guilt of his inadvertent role in the turmoil plaguing her marriage. He sought to distance himself, recognizing the boundaries that needed to be respected, yet found himself occasionally slipping back into old patterns of interaction. One evening, Edward decided to visit Abigail's home under the guise of returning a forgotten item. His heart pounded with a mixture of hope and apprehension as he rang the doorbell. Abigail opened the door, her eyes meeting his with a guarded mixture of surprise and wariness.
"Edward," she greeted, her voice measured. "What brings you here?" "I just realized I left my jacket inside."
"I'm sorry to intrude," Edward replied, holding up the garment. Abigail accepted the jacket, her fingers brushing his briefly.
"No problem. Take care, Edward."
As he left, Abigail felt a pang of unresolved emotions but steeled herself to maintain the boundaries they had both agreed upon. She understood that allowing Edward back into her life could jeopardize the progress she and Jonathan were striving to achieve.
A tense encounter.
Meanwhile, Jonathan found himself in a challenging situation at work. The impending merger, which he had hoped would mark a pinnacle in his career, now felt overshadowed by the personal chaos at home. One evening, as he stayed late to finalize the merger details, his phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Edward. "Jonathan, I wanted to apologize for any role I played in your and Abigail's situation. It was never my intention to cause pain. I hope you both find the peace you deserve."
The message left Jonathan conflicted. On one hand, he appreciated the gesture, recognizing Edward's sincerity.
On the other, it reopened wounds that he and Abigail were actively trying to heal. He contemplated replying but ultimately decided against it, choosing instead to focus on the tasks at hand.
Moments of doubt.
As time marched on, moments of doubt crept into both Jonathan and Abigail's minds. Despite their shared commitment to reconciliation, the shadows of infidelity and the lingering presence of Edward cast long and unpredictable silhouettes over their journey.
Jonathan's reflection.
Late one night, Jonathan sat alone in his study, the room bathed in the soft glow of a desk lamp. He reflected on his journey over the past months, grappling with the dual responsibilities of being a dedicated professional and a committed husband and father.
Have I truly done everything I can to make this work? Is my career worth the emotional toll it has taken on my family?
These questions weighed heavily on him, fueling a quiet desperation to find balance and restore the harmony he once took for granted.
Abigail's struggle.
In her own space, Abigail wrestled with the remnants of her actions and the fear of repeating past mistakes. She attended support group meetings, finding solace in the shared experiences of others navigating similar challenges. Yet, the internal battle between her lingering loneliness and her desire to honor her marriage proved to be an ongoing struggle.
Can I truly forgive myself? And can Jonathan forgive me? Is there a way to move forward without the pain of the past constantly looming over us?
These thoughts swirled in her mind, creating a tempest of emotions that she sought to calm through therapy, self-reflection, and the unwavering support of her daughters. A step toward clarity. One crisp autumn evening, as golden leaves danced in the gentle breeze outside, Abigail and Jonathan found themselves alone in the living room after putting Emma and Lily to bed. The atmosphere was calm, a stark contrast to the emotional storms that had previously engulfed them. "Jonathan," Abigail began, her voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability, "I've been thinking a lot about us and the future. I want to make sure that whatever path we choose, it's the right one for both of us and for our daughters." Jonathan nodded, meeting her gaze with a mixture of determination and tenderness.
"I feel the same way.
I want us to be happy, whether that's together or finding a way to support each other separately.
But I truly hope it's the former."
They sat in comfortable silence, the unspoken hope for reconciliation palpable in the air. It was a moment of mutual understanding, a reaffirmation of their commitment to navigating the complexities of their relationship with honesty and compassion.